1999? Has it been that long ago? Being a living legend is a hell of a lot better than the alternative, I'll tell you what. And I've sold since 1999 today. We're going to have these speeches a little bit more frequent. Basically, all I'm going to do is talk about the career of an entrepreneur that happens to have a good technical background. And I use my technical background, I think, in order to be a good entrepreneur. But there aren't too many geologists that have done as much as I've had and gone as many places and done as many things. But feel free to leave. Feel free to go to sleep or, whatever you want to. Elwin, you're still around.
I'll go to sleep right here in front of you.
Yeah. Denny Bartell, anything I say wrong, you can correct me.
I'm the sharpshooter today.
Huh?
I'm the sharpshooter today.
Sharpshooter?
On the straight and narrow, so.
I was raised in Central Illinois. My dad was a high school teacher, and I graduated from high school at Evanston, which is right north of Chicago. And when I was in high school, I dated this girl by the name of Jean Packer, and her father was in the oil business in West Texas. And so when I go to pick her up, I talked to him. He told me how he paid his petroleum engineer $1,000 a month, and talked to about the oil business. And his daughter came out, and it was downhill after that. I just really, really liked him. So, his daughter, I have no idea whatever happened to his daughter. In the summer of 1945, I decided I wanted to be in the oil business. So in the summer of 1945, I hitchhiked to Oklahoma from Chicago. It took me 3 days. Got a room in the YMCA in Oklahoma City. And that's the YMCA is where the Kerr-McGee building is now. I went out and started knocking on doors trying to find somebody to hire me for that summer, and so that I could go to school at the University of Oklahoma that fall. Are you already leaving?
I'm gone.
I got a job with Kerr-McGee in Oklahoma City in their drafting department, and so I spent all summer. Where are we? You're too far along. Back up. Yeah, what happened was in Illinois, when I decided I wanted to be in the oil business, I got on hill, went to downtown Chicago, bought this book, and memorized it, and found out what an anticline is, syncline is, rotor table, all that. And but that's my first initiation to the oil business. I'll tell you when. So anyhow, I worked for Kerr-McGee that summer in the drafting department, and then I went to school at OU, University of Oklahoma. Had no money, so I had sandwich routes and worked in cafeterias, and worked my way all the way through school at University of Oklahoma. And I also worked for Kerr-McGee on the weekends, so I hitchhiked to Oklahoma City and worked in their drafting department. Summer of 1947, Kerr-McGee took me and 2 other guys and sent us to Morgan City, and I worked offshore. The first well drilled out of sight of land in the world is Ship Shoal Block 28. They made me a mud engineer, and I knew nothing about drilling mud, and I screwed that system up so bad. But at Ship Shoal Block 28, the well is, I think, still producing. First well drilled out of sight of land in the world, and I was the mud engineer for that summer. And we had a barge attached to it. On the barge, we had the mud pits, we had pipe racks, had the cruise quarters, and then that was attached to a standard drilling unit. But I'm probably the only guy alive that's still on that first well drilled out of sight of land in the world. Yeah. And I'm just barely alive, too. But anyhow, I graduated from OU, worked for Kerr-McGee. They worked for them in Oklahoma City. Later on, they sent me out on a seismograph crew. I couldn't get back in the office, so I quit them and went to work for an independent in Wichita Falls, a guy by the name of S.D. Johnson. And we drilled wells in North Texas. And primarily, he didn't believe in geology. And in North Texas, you can do stratigraphic traps. So I spent most of my time taking tests and things like that. In the 1952, the Denver Basin boom started, and he tried to move me up to Denver. I didn't want to go to Denver, so I quit him, went on my own, had about highest salary I've ever made is $275 a month. I lived in the YMCA. He took his car away from me, and it's kind of tough to run an oil company out of the YMCA, really. I got some cards printed. One said Gene Van Dyke Geologist, and the other said Gene Van Dyke Oil Operator. It depended upon who I gave, whether I was talking to a landowner or somebody I wanted to sell the deal to, I gave them the cards, but I couldn't put YMCA on the business cards, so I put 1010 10th Street. That was before cell phones or anything, and all we had were hall phones, so somebody would call me on a deal, somebody else would beat me, and say YMCA on the hall phone. It's difficult to run a dignified oil company out of the YMCA. But then I used to hitchhike to Fort Worth and hitchhike to Dallas, and I slept in flop houses. But in any event, the first year I put some deals together and made about $40,000, and they were all dry holes. But anyhow, I made about $40,000. I used to got a little cubbyhole office in Wichita Falls. I used to go down there in the morning, buy a map, buy some logs, try to find a subsurface structure. At noon, I'd drive down to the courthouse, find out who owned the land. That night, I'd be talking to the farmer and trying to make a deal with him. And the next day, I'd be back at the office. And but anyhow, from 1952 to 1958, I gradually built something up in Wichita Falls, drilled wells in Jack County and Archer, Clay, Montague, got several good discoveries, got a very good discovery out in Haskell County. But North Texas is very mature, so I decided to move to Houston. And go ahead, next slide. So I moved to Houston and formed a partnership with a guy named George Maylander. And that partnership was from 1958 to about 1962. And we started playing first Texas coast, and then later on Louisiana. Didn't go offshore, stayed onshore. When I got involved in Louisiana, I dissolved the partnership and just went as Van Dyke Oil Company. And I played South Louisiana until, for about 10 years. Found the West Lake Arthur field and Thibodaux and several very good fields, but felt that, always felt that onshore U.S. is pretty mature, and I'm kind of crazy in that I want to go out after something big. And so about 1973, I became intrigued with the North Sea. That's the early stages of the North Sea. And I ran into two guys that had been with Exxon. One was Jim Watson and the other was Carl Swanson. These guys, Jim Watson was a brilliant geophysicist, but Exxon fired him because he was trying to unionize the geophysicists for Exxon, and that didn't work, so they fired him. They told me, if you want a good geophysicist, hire him, but if you want a businessman, forget him. So, but anyhow, I hired these two guys to play the North Sea, to get involved in the North Sea. So we put together a slideshow presentation like this, and then we went out in North America, talked to all the various oil companies about putting a group together for the North Sea. Is that me? You? There's a sign out in front that says, turn those damn things off.
I came in the back door.
That's the way you can go, too.
It's a YMCA call.
It's a YMCA call. I haven't paid my bill. Oh, $15.25. But anyhow, we went all over North America. Took about 3 months. Raised $2 or $3 billion to play the North Sea, and hell, I'd never even been to London before. So we went over there and ended up buying out Tenneco in offshore Holland. We paid Tenneco I forget, but we got 1.2 million acres, and so we bought out Tenneco in offshore Holland. As a result of that, I became kind of an authority on Holland. We built up a very, very good database. We got several quite significant discoveries. Then I'm not sure what's the next one. Oh no, seriously, there's something before that. Yeah, there you go. No, go back. That's Alaska. For what it might be worth, a Swanson River field was discovered. When was that discovered?
68.
Was it 60, huh? No, the Swanson River field was found about 59. Yeah, about 59 or 60. So on the Kenai Peninsula, what I did, I bought all the data I could buy on Alaska and from USGS, and tried to see where a follow-up could be to the Swanson River, which was found by ARCO, southwest of Anchorage, on the Kenai Peninsula, Swanson River Field. It's onshore, south of the Cook Inlet. Bought all this data, and became convinced that the north slope of Alaska had a lot of potential. The U.S. government during the Second World War drilled a number of wells, got 2 big discoveries up there, and so in 1962 I tried to put a group together to play the north slope of Alaska. And everybody said, "You're crazy. You know, hell, you've got a big mountain range with the Brooks Range there, and it's cold. You got Mustang. Nobody's ever going to drill up there." So many people thought I was crazy. I agreed with them, and so I didn't do anything about it. Then years went by. In 1968, I heard that Rex Jones, who was president of Humble then, here in the Petroleum Club, said, "Looks like we found another East Texas field." Well, East Texas field is 5 billion barrels. So, and in the Prudhoe Bay area, north slope of Alaska. I said, "Hell, man, now you get all these ideas, you don't do anything about them," and they found a major oil field. So I went up to Anchorage, then Fairbanks, and there was an area right west of NPR 4, which Point Lay is where Will Rogers went down. Let me get this pointer. Point Lay is where Will Rogers went down. This is all NPR 4. Here's Prudhoe Bay, Brooks Range. But this has exactly the same geology, same distance from actually Prudhoe Bay. All the shell work that you hear, which is recently shut down for a season, is right out here. And they found already several billion barrels of oil. And this is called the Chukchi Sea. And this area, whole area is open. And so I went out and applied for this whole area, got the whole area from the government, got 1.2 million acres, put up $600,000, did that on Wednesday, and Friday they announced the size of Prudhoe Bay, and what I paid $600,000 for was worth $15 or $20 million over the weekend. Just 3 or 4 days later. And so it just hit it, timing just right. So I held on to it for a number of years, and then they turned around and gave it to the natives and gave me my money back. big deal. But anyhow, go ahead. What we did then, I spent a number of years in the Dutch North Sea and found a number of fields, bringing in other oil companies as partners. This P9 Horizon field, I discovered it as a result of a farm-in that I took from Amoco. And we drilled this well and got a discovery out of this Cretaceous sand. It's called the Vleeland. It's a very tight sand, but we drilled a horizontal well on this field. And it's the first horizontal well drilled, I think, in the North Sea, but certainly in offshore Holland. This field has gone on now, has produced about 18 million barrels of oil. The wells, it's a fractured reservoir. This reservoir is very tight, but it's fractured, and the wells have averaged about 2 million barrels. So, you know, 2 million barrels at $100 a barrel is a lot of money. One well in this field has produced 7 million barrels. Go ahead. That's a discovery well we drilled in the Horizon field. We're in the process, this is the end. There is a structure northwest of this horizon, which is in block P9. It's called Horizon West, and it has not been developed. It's got about 50 million barrels in place. It's tight sand, and I'm in the process of buying this P8 field, and so we're right in the middle of that, and going to develop it. Go ahead. I've been a fan of deep water for a long time. Been a fan of FPSOs. Been intrigued with the idea that you can go out in 5,000 or 6,000 feet of water, get a discovery, complete it on the seafloor, bring a riser up, put a tanker up there, and never have to build anything. You can build a permanent platform to about 1,000-foot water depth, but more than 1,000-foot water depth, you have to use some kind of a floating facility. So I became intrigued with the possibility of going someplace in the world where you could use an FPSO, and kind of settled on West Africa. At that stage, at that time, West Africa, they drilled several deep water wells in Angola. They drilled a couple in Nigeria, but the West Africa was not, nobody done anything with that. So, go ahead. So what happened was, I got involved in Gabon, and Gabon had not had any deep water wells drilled, but I had some seismic, thought it had big potential. So I got a shallow water license from Gabon. Actually, that's right. You know, I had to pay them $1 million, and I wrote them a hot check, and they realized, I told them about that. They knew about that. April Fools wanted to do. But then I made a deal with Reading and Bates, ran low on money, and I made a deal with Reading and Bates. They loaned me $10 million to complete the acreage acquisition. So I got all the acreage together and got the shallow water block and the deeper water block. This is Gabon. And then in the summer of '97, I think it was, I had a sealed bid auction. I got offers from Amoco, Arco, Mobil, a number of companies. But the best offer I got was from Total. A guy by the name of Jean Gard brought this offer over from Paris. He said, Mr. Van Dyke, he said, this is a real, this is a real tough thing. He said, it took me at least 3 days to write you this, give you this offer. And I said, well, don't worry about it. It took me 50 years to receive it. So, but anyhow, I ended out with about $150 million in cash. Didn't have to pay any taxes anywhere. The money went to Bermuda. So I took that money and then used that to get this acreage position in West Africa. And over a period of about 3 years, I ended up being the largest license holder in Deepwater West Africa. I had over 20 million acres. I had acreage in Morocco, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, Ecuador, Guinea, Gabon, Madagascar. Not Madagascar, I got Madagascar later on. And got all this acreage and all these blocks, became a license holder in Deepwater. Is that the next slide? Yeah, here you are. basically, I spent all that money putting these blocks together, and then I had to do. We had some 2D, but not too much, and I had to have 3D. So I made a deal with about 3 of the big seismic companies, where they go ahead and shoot my acreage with 3D, and then I'd pay them 2 years after they finish their program. So I had the acreage, had the 2D, had plenty of time to bring in a partner, and that worked out. It worked out very, very, very well. And I brought in partners on all these blocks. We drilled the first deepwater well up here in Morocco on a great big structure, big above a salt dome, but there are no reservoirs. They're good source rocks, but no reservoir. We ended up drilling a well on the very southwestern part of Côte d'Ivoire on a structure the size of Galveston Island. Big, 35 miles long, about 15 miles wide, a beautiful structure. Had no DHIs, but the structure is so big. We drilled the well and had about 2,000 feet of very good reservoir sand, but it's dry. The source rocks didn't work. You know, and since we have discoveries in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, and I'll talk to it later. Oh yeah, Madagascar. What happened in Madagascar? Actually, I probably started the play in East Africa. The big play that you hear now is right over here in Mozambique. Offshore, they have 100 trillion cubic feet of gas, maybe 150 trillion cubic feet of gas, which is all going to go liquefy and go east. But what happened was, summer of 2000, my wife and I went up to Banff and Lake Louise, and we went to Calgary, and the Society of Exploration and Geophysicists had a convention there. And so I went by there, and Madagascar had a booth. You've heard that, Elvin? I don't know, I guess you have. Madagascar had a booth, and went by that booth, and the booth was about 15 feet wide. And on the back side of the booth was a seismic dip section. Looked exactly like a dip section that you run from Houston down to Galveston, see? And I could see all these big salt domes. And on that dip section, like from here to Galveston, there are about 5 big salt domes. And I asked the guy at the booth, I said, well, where's this? He said, well, it's on the Majunga Basin. And I said, where's that? And he said, it's right here. At one time, this was right here. And it came down south. And so he said, the Majunga Basin. I said, well, those are salt domes. And at that time, nobody knew there was any salt in East Africa. You have, of course, all the way along the coast in West Africa. And so he said, oh, there they are. And so I sent some of my guys down to Antananarivo. They found that one section, but nobody down there with the government oil company knew anything about it. Through a series of detective work, we found that this whole area had been shot by Mobil. They shot it in 1970. This is 2000. They shot it in 1970. They thought the water was too deep, and they donated all the seismic to the University of Texas, and everything was up at Austin. And so I sent my guys up to Austin. They let us copy the seismic. We copied the lines. We copied the structure. We found about 5 or 6 big salt domes. And so then I went down to Madagascar and got a lease on 3 million acres, which leased the entire basin. Leased it out to 3,000 meters, leased it out to where the salt stops on either side, and got the whole thing. I went out then and shot it with 2D seismic, one a close far grid, another close grid, and basically all we did is duplicate multiple seismic. So then we got ready to bring in partners. And one of the first companies I talked to was Exxon. Exxon had bought Mobil. Exxon went in their own files, looked through their own files, saw this stuff that we got up to Austin, and I made a big deal with Exxon. See? and Exxon still has it. But that's one of the things that really kicked off. I was down, we had all the seismic up here. We saw all these fans. We saw bright spots. We realized that this area had fantastic potential. So I went down to Mogadishu, and made an offer to drill 2 wells up here. A completely virgin area, 2 wildcats, completely virgin area to get a license. Anadarko came in and offered 7 firm wells. And the wells were not conditioned upon the results of the previous well. And that's when they got this major discovery. But what we did, I think, in Madagascar kind of started that thing off. Okay. Next. Oh, well, when you put all that acreage together that we had, including Madagascar, later on we got this Ukraine block, it's about 70% of the Deepwater Gulf of Mexico. Around 20 million acres. Go ahead. Well, we've got some discoveries lately. Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Go ahead. I got a big block. You've probably heard about the Mahogany discovery and the Fellows discoveries. This is around 1 billion barrels. These are stratigraphic traps. There's a big fan coming from Ghana, and it turned out to be a very big field. Now, of course, what happened was South America was down here. When South America took off to the southwest, there was a series of structures formed along here. And so I got a lease on 1,600 square kilometers. Well, got a lease on, what is it, 1.2 million acres to follow these structures along. And a couple of years ago, we got a discovery well called the Dazada well, and its first structure drilled offshore Ghana. And we're now developing this field. Yeah, well, I talked about that. Big play now. The Black Sea is probably the only virgin basin in the world, really. The Black Sea has exactly the same geology as the Caspian. But the problem with the Black Sea is that it's about 2,000 meters water depth, and you have a hard time getting drill ships in there. There are 2 bridges down here at Istanbul, so you have to actually bring a drill ship in from the Mediterranean. You have to take the derrick down, go under the bridges, put the derrick back up, and it costs about $40 million just to get in the Black Sea. I tried to get licenses in Turkey, but the deal was too tough, so I ended up working on Ukraine. There's a 2D seismic program that had been shot a number of years ago. I bought that, and we ended up making a competitive bid for the first license award that had been done by Ukraine. And we're successful. Go ahead. Next. Oh, this is a bidding session. Hunt put in a bid, Shell, myself, a Turkish petroleum company, and the Ukraine National Oil Company. We all put in competitive bids. Actually, what happened was, I had this 2D seismic. We saw some very, very, very big structures. We found one structure right offshore that was about 30 miles long, about 15 miles wide. When the Russians controlled the Ukraine, they had ran a submarine along the axis of the structure, and hydrocarbons were coming up from it. So we knew that we had something we wanted to drill. So I bid 2 firm wells, a seismic, big seismic program, 2 firm wells. The other companies bid a seismic program and conditional wells. Wells are conditional on the outcome of the seismic. And I think that's why we got in position aside from the others. But in any event, they decided to give the award to me. Go ahead. These are companies we've had in projects from time to time. I've had groups in the North Sea brought in these companies as partners. We've never dealt with individuals. We've never brought individuals in as partners. Always with large oil companies. Individuals, I think, turn out to be kind of a pain in the ass, you know. Not on a personal basis, but when you drill a dry hole, they're a pain in the ass. Go ahead. In the North Sea, this is a database that we acquired. We have all this seismic, both here and then up there. And what happened was I've been operating as Vanco Energy Company in West Africa and in the Ukraine, and grew to the point where I had 2 floors over here at Greenway. These wells are costing over $100 million, and field development plan is $2 billion, and it just got very, very big. About 3 years ago, I brought in Lukoil as a partner in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, and we got discoveries. And then Lukoil wanted to kind of take over, so I made a deal with Lukoil where I sold them. I own Vanco Energy Company. I made a deal with them where I sold them controlling interest in Vanco Energy Company, and I kept a good deal of stock. I was the president, but I got to the point where I had this interest, but didn't have to put up any more money, and so then then I signed a 5-year employment contract, which could be terminated at the end of 2 years, either by them. If they terminated, they had to give me a bunch of money. If I terminated, I didn't get any more money, and so that was a 5-year employment contract. Well, then they brought in a gal, a 38-year-old accountant. This is Russians. They brought in a 38-year-old accountant that didn't know anything about the damn oil business and made her my boss. She started micromanaging me. You can imagine that. And hell, I didn't know anything about it. Anticline, syncline, drill bit, whatever. And I'd make a deal, and she thought it was a good deal. She could fine-tune it and make it better. So I got all that I could take, and that deal was we could be terminated at the end of 2 years, and so last fall, and that was just past February. So last fall, I told my wife, I said, you know, I'm going to get out of this shit. This is absolutely ridiculous. Ain't no way. So I said, you know, between now and February, I'm going to be as obnoxious as hell. So they have to can me. And she said, well, don't worry about it, Gene. Just be yourself. just relax. She'll get rid of you. But the amount of money involved was such that she didn't get rid of me, so I just left. And so what I've done, I still have that stock and stuff like that, but I'm going back to the North Sea and going back initially to Holland. And we're essentially playing unconventionals in offshore Holland, which has not been done. We're going to play the offshore, and we're going to do what they're doing in West Texas offshore. And then we're going into the southern North Sea. We're in the process also of buying this field, which is P8, which is northwest of the P9 field, which I told you about. And but we're playing that. We have this big database, and I'm doing my own thing. So I think that's about it, isn't it?